Alright, so why do I prefer Tamron lenses over Sony's premium G Master lenses? Well, here's something that I've learned the hard way. The best piece of gear is the one that you actually bring with you. So if your setup is too much of a hassle and you don't bring it out, then what's the point, right? I used to grab my Sony G Master lenses every single shoot, and I was always thinking, yeah, best image quality, best autofocus, why would I go with anything else? I shoot for businesses regularly, but I actually use my camera way more casually, like when I go out or when I travel, so that's a big factor for me. We're not gonna talk about any specs, there's already a million videos on that already, but we are gonna cover autofocus, sharpness, functionality, build quality, and price to performance ratio. So stick around if you wanna see all the details on this and which features matter the most. So this is the one that's gonna matter a lot to people, and that is autofocus. Is it actually good enough? Because a lot of people assume that third-party lenses means that it's gonna have terrible autofocus, which, yeah, that used to be true, but not anymore. Eye tracking? Check. Works in low light? Yep. Snappy for video? Surprisingly, yeah. Sony's lenses might have a slight edge, but for me, I shoot fast action dog sports, which is faster than normal human sports, and I have rarely had any trouble keeping up. A lot of people think it's like such a make it or break it deal, but for me, I have never been in a situation where I was like, oh man, I really wish I had the G Master to get these shots. It's never been like that. As for sharpness, the overhyped debate. People get real dramatic about sharpness, like I can definitely tell the difference. But can you? I've shot with both, and in the real world, they're basically a tie. Like, unless you're printing a billboard or just love zooming in on people's pores, you're never really gonna notice. Honestly, in video, half your footage has motion blur, and nowadays, so many creators put filters on their lenses to make it less sharp, like the one I have on, so joke's on you. Moral of the story, don't stress sharpness. If your photo sucks, it's probably not the lens. Something that people don't talk about enough is the actual usability. With Tamron, they keep things simple, and sometimes that's better. All of the lenses have the same filter size, so you don't need to get a bunch of different ones. And the most important thing is probably the lighter build. It's easier on your wrist, your back, and it's easier to balance on a gimbal. And I know most people are probably bummed because they don't have an aperture ring or extra buttons, but I've had the older G Masters and they didn't have an aperture ring or all those extra buttons, so it doesn't really bother me. Sony's G Master lenses, they're built like tanks, which is great until you have to carry them all day. Let me tell you, going hiking with it is not fun. Putting it on a neck strap and it's swinging around everywhere, no good. If it's in your hand the whole time, your forearm and wrist gets wrecked, and bringing a backpack and having to pull it out every single time is just too slow. I know every review they talk about how the Tamron feels cheap and plasticky, but it's just as durable as you really need it to be. Like, if you drop either of the lenses, it's probably gonna mess up the lens, but you're gonna have a smaller heartbreak with the Tamron one. All right, price to performance ratio. For me, this was not one of the deciding factors on why I use Tamron lenses, but I know this is a very big factor for people that might be buying their first lens or maybe getting their second one. So we're gonna go over it together anyways. Don't get me wrong, Sony makes great lenses, but they also make very expensive lenses. Like, I could have bought a small used car instead type of expensive. Let's take the Sony 24-70 version 2. That thing is like $2,300, while Tamron's alternative of the 28-75 is only about $900. So I guess the real question is, does the G Master give you $1,400 worth of extra magic? And I think we all know the answer to that, because not really. Said earlier, the sharpness is basically identical unless you really zoom in, and for autofocus, the Tamron keeps up just fine unless you're really trying to track something small and fast like a hummingbird. As for build quality, Sony's is more premium and has more weight to it, but it's not something that's gonna save your lens if you drop it. However, they do have weather sealing, so if you're constantly shooting in the rain or snow or whatever people do outside of normal conditions, then that might be a deciding factor for you, but I don't shoot in those conditions, so it doesn't really matter. But the final question is, should you get the Tamron or the G Master? If price isn't a big deal and you just want the best of the best, then yeah, go ahead and get the G Master, because there's nothing that's going to compare to the image quality and the autofocus performance. But if you care about value, portability, and keeping your bank account alive, then Tamron is the obvious choice here. But if I wanted a minimal setup that had a lot of coverage, I would rather have 2 Tamron lenses for the price of 1 Sony G Master. And trust me, your client is not going to know the difference between which lens you use, and nowadays most lenses are all pretty good, so just pick the one that works best for your line of work. But anyways, if you like this video, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, and just let us know in the comments which lens setup you like best.